Last week, I told you a little bit about a Christian comedian by the name of Jeff Allen. He has this other bit he does about older married couples where one spouse has kind of dominated the other one for a number of years. And he says, you know these people, you've seen them around. It's like you see, maybe a woman and she's walking way up ahead of her husband and she's got, this stern look on her face, this drive in her step. And there's her husband like 5, 6 steps behind her, and he's all like hunched over and shaken from 60 years of being told what to do. And he's sitting there mumbling to himself, no one, this woman always telling me what to do all the time. No one's gonna tell me what to do all the time. I'm a man. I'm gonna do what I want to do. No woman's gonna tell me what I need to do. She turns around and says, "What are you talking about back there?" And I ain't talking about nothing. Today, we're going to talk about feeling valued in your relationship. Last week, we talked a little bit about when we can accidentally make our spouses or begin to even perceive without even realizing it, our spouses as our enemies. Where we can begin to assume that, well, when they said one thing, they meant something else. Or that perhaps they had an ulterior motive in a certain situation. Instead of feeling like they're our allies, we start to look for ways where our spouse is almost out to get us. And this is one of the great tools of Satan, to create a place of division based only on our hunches. And we talked about the fact that if we're going to assume anyways, if we're going to make an assumption one way or the other, let's assume on the side of love. For the person that we are supposed to care for, that's supposed to care for us, that we've made a covenant in the presence of God to love them, to trust them, to build up a godly house with them. What if we would assume on the side of they actually care for us instead of they're out to get us? And we turn an enemy into an ally. We turn someone who's trying to hurt us into a confidant, to someone that we can open up to, that we can be ourselves around, that we can be relaxed around, and we can grow closer to as a couple married under the love of Jesus Christ. Today, I want to go one step farther into this conversation. And I want to talk about what it looks like for you to feel as if your spouse hears what you say, and for your spouse to feel heard as well. Too often, one of the big barriers that comes up between couples is that one spouse or both doesn't feel as if the other one actually hears them or cares about what they say, or even that what they say is valued by their spouse. In Ephesians 4:2-3, it says, "Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bonds of peace." I think this is great words for us as we talk about what it looks like to make sure to create sacred, safe space where our spouse can open up and they feel like we have listened to them. Even if we don't always agree, even if there are parts of it we don't understand right away, that we have at least listened and valued what they say. I mean, do you feel like what you say is valued by your spouse? Do you honestly think that your spouse feels like what they say to you is important to you? Scripture says that we are to be humble, we are to be gentle, and we are to be patient. I take this idea of being gentle and patient, and I think of the element that so often when we have conversations, we are already beginning to formulate our response before they've even finished talking? What if instead we stopped and we just sat there and listened and we really tried to understand what they're trying to say and how it is they feel? I find if we're not careful, because our world teaches us to be so rushed, that if somebody doesn't get to the point quick enough for us, we begin to tune them out. Or if we're not careful, if we feel like that they are in the wrong, we begin to bark at them, yell at them in the middle of them talking before they've even finished their thoughts. This whole idea of being patient with each other, I think, extends to so much more than just the idea of making sure that we are focusing on their thoughts, their feelings, what they're trying to truly communicate to us, and us taking it to heart, not taking it as if, what is their problem? Why are they upset now? But to really feel, why do they feel? Why do they think the way that they do? I think we can go a bit deeper into this idea of being patient. And I think, especially in our world today, where so often we can be pulled in so many directions all at once, our spouse may be used to them trying to talk to us, or us them, and somebody's watching TV the whole time, or staring at their phone, or looking at a book. And the entire time that someone's speaking, the other spouse barely even looks up. Now I know some of you are great at multitasking. I know that some of you can tell me that yes, you can fully hear what they're saying, but it's not just about that. They need to see your eyes. They need to know that you are so important, that they are so important to you, that you are willing to say, I'm going to set this aside for a minute and focus just on you. I need to know that you are important to me, and I want you to know how important you are as well. And so we need to set aside some of those things. Just take a moment to not be so wrapped up in it. I think in the same way as this scripture says, we need to be humble in our communications. It can be too easy for us to just assume right away that our spouse means something and they're going somewhere in a conversation. But at the same point, um, sometimes our spouse just needs someone to talk to. Guys, we're really good at this. We are fixers by nature. A lot of guys, even some ladies I know, they are fixers by nature. They hear someone come to them with an issue, and right away they want to go, okay, how do I solve this issue? And many times our spouses come to us and they're not looking for us to fix them. What they want is for us to listen to them. One of the ways that I try to make this work, I think I mentioned this a little bit last week, is I try. I don't always succeed, but I try to ask my wife sometimes, okay, do you want some feedback about this? And she'll tell me, which is good. And so you should tell your loved one as well. There's another element inside of here, though, where sometimes one spouse can feel as if they are not heard because their loved one seems not interested. Now, we need to understand that some people use few words and don't talk often. Someone can still feel heard and only say a few words. You can hear them because what that means often is that what they say is more thought out and purposeful. Others of us, we talk so much because we're trying to express something that's beyond words. And we could talk for an hour and a half, and some of us do, and we still feel like we haven't fully expressed how we feel or what we think. And so this idea of feeling like our spouse does not care, it actually has nothing to do with how much they speak or don't speak. As a matter of fact, sometimes Sometimes I feel like some spouses say, I just don't feel like my loved one cares at all. They're just not interested in having a deeper relationship and me hearing them and them honestly hearing me and what I have to say. And to be honest, sometimes this can be due to a number of different things. If this is something that's been going on for a long time, there may be some depression involved. That there may be some situations from past relationships where they have been hurt and they've just chosen to turn off that part of themselves, consciously or subconsciously, to say, I'm just not going to let someone hurt me like that again. For others, there may be elements of just so much pressure on their life at work or at school or even around the house that they feel like they just can't keep up. And sometimes there's unresolved issues between spouses where something happened even 20 years ago or just a month ago. And it shut the door on both communication or this deeper sense of feeling heard and opening it up so that they can be heard, that the other spouse can communicate as well. And it's important to make the difference between these long-term moments of almost seeing your spouse as numb and the short-term moments. Because sometimes they just had a bad day. And yes, they're upset, and yes, they're hurt, and no, it has nothing to do with you. They're just feeling something and they're allowed to feel that. So in that moment, instead of us being hurt because they're not listening to us, what if we tried to create space so that we could listen to them? To find out why it is they're hurting, what's going on inside of them. And sometimes we are upset or hurt or angry or depressed or anything else, and we have absolutely no good reason why. I want you to know that if that happens to you every once in a while or that happens to your spouse, you are not alone. It's okay to own that, and it's important to communicate that. To just simply say, I'm having an off day today. It's got nothing to do with you. That helps both sides to communicate and to move forward without any unspoken concerns that what if this person thought this about what I said here? There's those assumptions all over again. The other thing I want you to do is I want to invite you to consider how your spouse may communicate without words. Now, yes, sometimes your wife may drop a hint or two that they would like you to do something around the house. Sometimes the guy might drop a hint or two that he wants to go to bed a little early tonight. But it's more than just that. Notice what kind of shows that your loved one watches. Why do they watch the ones that they do? What kind of activities do they enjoy? What hobbies do they have? Even all the way down to what are their favorite scriptures or songs? Or does their personality seem to change a little for the better, or even worse when a certain person comes around? You see, when you begin to understand how someone communicates beyond just the verbal, you begin to understand them as a person. You can go so much deeper in your relationship with one another. Because as Scripture tells us, we complete each other. That when a man leaves his father and mother and is married to his wife, then the two become one. And we'll talk more about that in the future. But that you complete each other. You will see things, start to value things, important things of the other person that you may not have noticed or they may not have noticed in themselves. And so you find yourselves growing closer to one another. And so here's my question. Do you feel valued when you speak to your spouse like you're important enough to listen to? Do you feel like what you say is taken in? Even if they don't always agree with it, even if they don't always understand it, is it received? In the same way, do you think that your spouse feels valued to you when they speak to you? If I were to ask them, would they say that what they say to you is taken in and considered, or is it judged? Or is it blown off? Listen to each other. Truly understand one another. And as our scripture says, in the process, be humble, gentle, patient. Bear with each other in love, and make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit of God through the bond of peace. I love you. I'm praying for you. I'll see you again next week.